Good evening. I'm Dr. Marta Moreno Vega. I'm the founder of Creative Justice Initiative and the co-founder of Corredor Afro, and I welcome you to this discussion. I'm so pleased that after 10 years of speaking with Sandino about the possibility of doing this gathering, it has finally happened. So Sandino, thank you. And Ebenezer, thank you, because it is because of their organizing skills and bringing the panels together. The title of the panel, as you know, is An Intentional Matrix of Life. One of the things that I'm aware of in terms of looking at the life of Arturo Alfonso Schomburg is that he reminds me of my father in a very real way, who was born in Loíza, Puerto Rico, and self-educated himself intentionally. Right? These were men that were born in a period that oftentimes public education was not available to them because of their color, because the color of their skin. Yet they became incredible human beings and self-taught and brilliant. So that I am honored to be in the presence of members of the fraternity of the Freemasons that continues the work that people like Arturo Alfonso Schomburg and people like my father, who didn't have the opportunity to go to school, but made an education for himself. So thank you all for being present. And one of the things I'd like to start with is, who is the Alfonso Arturo Schomburg? How does he come to be the man and the person that he is, and provide us the information, the light to follow as Afro-descendants, as Afro-Latinos, Afro-Caribbeans, however we self-define, he had a role in it. So I would like to start with Ebenezer to give us an understanding of who Alfonso Schomburg is. Ebenezer, no se oye. No se oye. Ahora parece.
I think he's still muted.
Está muted. Venezuela, mute. Ahora.
Gracias aquí por la asistencia técnica, excelente. Bueno, pues decía que para mí es un privilegio compartir con ustedes este foro, este conversatorio sobre una figura excepcional, una figura mundial que cada día tiene más relevancia entre nosotros, los que queremos un cambio verdadero en la sociedad, erradicando de toda forma el racismo y siendo reconocido como parte de la especie humana, que es realmente lo que somos. Arturo Alfonso Schomburg, muy temprano en su vida, tuvo la oportunidad de encontrar razones para pensar que había mucho que hacer en torno al descubrimiento, señalamiento del origen de las personas negras. Se cuenta, por un lado, que un profesor en la escuela que diríamos aquí primaria, tenía como práctica, en su escuela en San Juan, tenía como práctica asignarle a los estudiantes libros para que los revisaran y conversaran y trajeran alguna información que pudiera ser compartida por todos los demás. Pero se cuenta también que dentro de esos libros que repartía el profesor, no había libros sobre la historia de África ni sobre el impacto de África en la especie de la civilización. De ahí se habla entonces que Arturo Alfonso Schomburg siente una gran interrogante por sus orígenes y despierta una curiosidad que con el tiempo va a desarrollar. Pero como todas las historias hay otra versión. Se dice entonces que un amigo que conoció en Nueva York, cuando obviamente llegó a Nueva York, que era Serra, pues es el que le dice, mira, yo estoy coleccionando artículos sobre la negritud y creo que esto vale la pena. Y entonces ahí también Schomburg siente ese otro impulso, ese aguijón, para convertirse en coleccionista. Cualquiera de las dos versiones es buena y las dos son buenas y ninguna es mala, porque ciertamente lo que tenemos que hacer es reconocer que este ser humano especial tuvo la sensibilidad de dedicar gran parte de su tiempo y de su tesoro personal, porque él no era un rico, no era millonario, no era de familia caudalada y tenía que trabajar para vivir, y dedicó buena parte de su ingreso a obtener artículos que evidenciaran la historia de África y de los africanos y su impacto en la civilización mundial. Así que yo creo que ese es su primer gran logro. Segundo, que se convirtió autodidacta, se convirtió en un gran exponente de la historia de las personas negras y del continente africano. Y él viajó a diferentes estados de los Estados Unidos de América a dar charlas, conferencias, a participar, fundó centros de estudio, ¿verdad? Fue contratado eventualmente por universidades para dirigir colecciones, así que creció intensamente como ser humano y eso le permitió insertarse en muchos otros centros, ¿verdad?, de actividad. Cuando sale de Puerto Rico y llega a Estados Unidos de América, específicamente a Nueva York, pues comparte uno de los grandes centros que en ese momento estaban albergando las actividades y las aspiraciones de grupos emigrados del Caribe a Estados Unidos y que querían romper con el dominio colonial que en ese caso tenía España sobre Puerto Rico. Y se reunían en Nueva York, se reunían en Nueva Orleans, se reunían en diferentes lugares y continuaban alimentando el deseo de que Puerto Rico fuese libre. Así que en el término de la política, los primeros años de Schomburg en Estados Unidos se caracterizan por su intensa actividad política. De hecho, fue apadrinado por Betances, a quien él conoció en San Tomás. Betances estaba proscrito en Puerto Rico, pero iba frecuentemente a San Tomás y se reunía con personas de intereses revolucionarios. Y ahí es que Betances conoce a Schomburg y lo marca y lo deja profundamente impresionado, al grado tal que luego ya Schomburg en Nueva York hay dos organizaciones que lo acogen. Uno es el Partido Revolucionario Cubano, que lo acoge en la sección de Puerto Rico de ese partido y lo designan o eligen o nombran como sea secretario de la entidad. Es el que recibe toda la información, en cierta forma todos los secretos, ese es el que maneja todas las comunicaciones. Pero también a la vez fue designado, se organizó otro grupo que se llamaba las dos Antillas, también para luchar por la independencia de Puerto Rico y de Cuba, y de ese grupo, las dos Antillas, también fue secretario, con toda la importancia y la información que eso tiene. Así que Schomburg es una persona realmente muy influyente en las mentalidades de su tiempo, y fue una persona que fue marcando un rumbo hacia dónde debía ir toda esa inconformidad caribeña, en este caso con España. Eventualmente se habla de diferentes fechas, quizás para 1908 o 10, él ingresa a una logia, era una logia cubana, era una logia de habla española, y es una logia que lo acoge, ahí comienza, una logia masónica, ahí comienza a crecer más como ser humano, ahí comienza a desbordar sus pasiones y sus intereses por conocer más, ya no en la cuestión personal política, sino en la cuestión filosófica, sobre su origen, hacia dónde va, las obligaciones que tiene con el gesto de los seres humanos, las obligaciones éticas que surgen de esa masonería que él comienza a descubrir, que la hace suya y que después, en cierta forma, es un gran maestro masón. Así que es un proceso interesante porque
si es posible, dilo como a qué edad está hablando que estaba Schomburg en este punto cuando entra a la masonería.
La información que yo tengo es que Schomburg entró a la masonería más o menos en el 1908, ¿verdad? De hecho, hay libros que dicen que cuando él llegó a Nueva York ya era masón. Eso no es correcto. O sea, él llega a Nueva York muy joven y después que conoce la masonería. Primero,
¿a qué edad está? Ya tiene que es como 18 años, joven.
Según si fue en el 1908, estaba ya cerca de los 20 y tantos años, porque era un joven adulto, ya con experiencias de vida, con grandes interrogantes que quería satisfacer, y comenzó a buscar esas explicaciones a través del mundo masónico, que fue para él una gran escuela, fue para él una gran forma de integrarse con otras personas y fue también para él una gran manera de hacer aportaciones a toda la humanidad, porque el pensamiento masónico es para toda la humanidad y ayuda a todos los seres humanos que queremos crecer.
Vamos a entrar y pasar en estos momentos a Pedro Nicol Santana, que nos explique, porque ya tú introduciste en la palabra, ¿verdad? O el concepto de la Freemasonry, ¿verdad? De los masones. ¿Qué es ser masón? ¿Qué son las reglas de ser masón? ¿Right? Porque mucha gente no sabe lo que lo han oído, pero no sabe lo que es.
Buenas noches, buenas noches. Nos convoca en esta ocasión la figura egregia de Arturo Alfonso Schomburg. El hermano Ebenezer menciona cuando le entra a la masonería. Los datos que yo tengo es que entra en el 1892, a la tierna edad de 18 años. Y está en una cultura totalmente distinta que la vio crecer. Así que él busca refugio, en cierto modo, en la masonería, porque tiene que haberle entendido que la masonería acogía a hombres buenos y lo hacían mejores. Y así entra. Yo creo que es importante tener unos conceptos básicos de lo que es la masonería. Primero, la masonería no discrimina por razones de raza, de educación, de orientación política o lo que sea, ni cuestiones de que si uno es de una trata social más alta que los demás. Allí todos, dentro de una logia, todos somos hermanos. Lo segundo es que es el elemento común de todos los masones en una logia particular, es el deseo de ser mejores seres humanos, de querer mejorar, aprender a dominar las pasiones y a crecer y a desarrollarse en esa línea. No hay duda que Arturo Alfonso Schomburg estaba buscando esa protección. Y desde esa curul que le brindaba la masonería, esa protección, esa seguridad, esa escuela que le enseñaba a crecer hacia el frente, él busca un nuevo derrotero para salir de la opresión que sentía que Puerto Rico estaba viviendo con España. De ahí que se asocia con el grupo que busca la independencia de Cuba y le hacen como una esquinita y es el grupo de Puerto Rico. Fíjense que en esa ocasión él está participando con grandes figuras de la sociedad y de la política y del arte cubano, inclusive cuando surge la bandera cubana, que la de Puerto Rico en cierto modo es una réplica, una alteración de colores, pero ciertamente nos une ese diseño de la bandera. Así las cosas, el hombre se mueve hacia adelante. Alguien preguntó qué buscaba Arturo Alfonso Schomburg en la masonería. Yo creo que debo reiterar que era ser un mejor ser humano. Así que con esos ingredientes básicos, yo creo que podemos empezar la discusión del tema que nos convoca a nosotros, que son los principios de Arturo Alfonso Schomburg, que no son otros principios que adoptados de la misma masonería, y los tienes a hacer público a la sociedad en que vivía. Hay que recordar que para el tiempo de Arturo Alfonso Schomburg, los negros vivían en una sociedad paralela a la sociedad principal. Ahora hay una integración que quizá la gente no lo entiende, pero cierto modo, para aquellos tiempos tenían una sociedad paralela. Así que me abro las preguntas que tengan a bien ustedes hacer sobre ese tema.
So, vamos a seguir y después regresamos a la sección de preguntas y más información. ¿Está Luis todavía conectado? Olga, ¿está Luis conectado? Bueno, vamos a seguir con Sandino. Okay. Sandino Sánchez, yo lo conocí como jovencito y en ese proceso hemos creado distintas cosas con las instituciones que él estaba asociado. Y para mí es un gran honor que él fue parte de organizar este panel y también verlo crecer y entender ahora que es parte de the Freemason Fraternity. So, Sandino, dinos por qué, el por qué. Tú iniciaste.
Sí, sí, sí. I'm going to speak in English.
We're bilingual.
Yes, we're bilingual, but I'm going to speak in English. So when I was my name is Sandino Sanchez. I'm currently the junior Grand Warden of the Most Worshipful Principal Grand Lodge. I was Arturo Schomburg has been an idol of mine, a hero of mine since I was in high school. Arturo Schomburg was the first Prince Hall Latino, the first Afro-Latino secretary, Grand Secretary of the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge. It's important to indicate that he was a Prince Hall Mason for a lot of reasons that has been mentioned, but it's very important. When he came to New York, he decided to become a Prince Hall Mason. He had other choices, but that's a choice that he made for political reasons and philosophical reasons. I know Dr. Marta Vega for many, many years. Many years ago when I was in high school, I attended she was the director at the time of the Caribbean Cultural Center at that time, and there was a picture exposition of all civil rights leaders that have been impacted by the civil rights leaders, Marcus Garvey. There's a lot of noise in the back. Marcus Garvey, and in that picture collage, two people stood out. One of them, Arturo Schomburg, or Arthur Schomburg. And I did some research. I was in high school. I was maybe in the 10th grade. And I did research, and that kind of stuck in my mind because he was an Afro-Latino, following the teachings that I've been exposed to my entire life. I am Dominican. I am from Dominican descent. And I've been told since I was a little kid that there's African blood that goes through my veins. So in the spirit of that, I kept digging and digging and digging. And then I realized all of the accomplishments that Arturo Schomburg had made, that he was a Grand Secretary, that he was a Master Mason, that he was a 33rd degree Mason, and all those things I learned. So when it was my time to join, I decided to be a Prince Hall Mason to follow his footsteps. I had choices. At that time, there were two Latino lodges in New York City. Fraternidad Lodge, part of the Grand Lodge of New York, and in the Prince Hall family, it was Prince Hall 38, we have a member here on the panel, Jamal Ali. Before it was called Prince Hall 38, it was Sol de Cuba, which is the lodge that he joined. It's important to say that because he found a home in the African community. Didn't find a home anywhere else. He found a home in the African community that helped him develop the skills that he has as a person. So as I continued my journey in Masonry, I eventually became a past master. I became the Grand Secretary. So I'm the third Latino Grand Secretary in the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge. And now I stand before you as a Junior Grand Warden, and most likely, God willing, will be the first Latino Grand Master in the state of New York, hopefully in the next 5 years. So I say all that to say that it wasn't by chance that I became a Master Mason. I became a Master Mason because our founder, Prince Hall, was a justice-driven person. He was a civil servant. He was an educator. He was a businessman and a civil rights leader. And that's the foundational work behind uplifting people of color starts and originated with our founder, Prince Hall, who Arturo Schomburg decided at his time to join that fraternity.
Thank you so much, Sandino. And since Ali, you were mentioned, and you're the continuum, right? In terms of the lodge that you were part of, can you share with us what impressed you, what influenced you, what was your driving force, right, in terms of joining the lodge, and if Arturo Schomburg being part of the lodge was part of that motivation.
Sure. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. So again, my name is Jamal Ali. I'm a proud Prince Hall Mason. I'm a member of Prince Hall Lodge number 38, formerly El Sol de Cuba Lodge, which Arthur Schomburg was a member of. For those who may not be familiar, a lodge is essentially the equivalent of a chapter in an organization, right? So I served as worshipful master, which is the equivalent of the president of a chapter. I also served as the grand treasurer of the most worshipful Prince Hall Lodge, Grand Lodge of the state of New York, in 22 through 24. So I became familiar with Arturo Schomburg when one of the more seasoned members in the lodge kind of gave us a tutorial, so to speak, of some of the notable members historically in the lodge. And at first, just based on the name, I assumed that Arthur Schomburg was a Jewish man, right? And I assume that because I know that historically Jewish individuals face challenges joining mainstream lodges as well, the same way Latinos did in the time. So many of them found a home in Prince Hall lodges as well. So this prompted me to do my own homework, of course, leading me down like a rabbit hole, so to speak, of information, not only understand his contributions, but also the circles in which he fellowshipped in and with, so many people who we learn about historically in Black history and Black culture, your Carter G. Woodsons, your Du Boises, your Marcus Garveys, so on and so forth. So it's very interesting to understand the history of someone who sat in the same seat that I sat in, sat in the same room that I sat in, that contributed so much to what we kind of recognize as the cornerstone of written Black history in this country. And to have served, again, in the same place, so to speak, it's just really been an honor. Him being the 77th worshipful master of my lodge and me being the 77th is kind of the link in my mind that we're kindred spirits in a way. So just really honored to be here today to have this conversation with you all and contribute in any way I can.
Thank you. Thank you. Luis, do you hear me? Luis, ¿me oye? ¿Me escucha? Ok, so, vamos a hablar sobre la combinación, ¿verdad? Que sale Schomburg del Caribe, de Puerto Rico, a Nueva York, y que se enfrenta, ¿verdad? En el proceso de desarrollarse como la persona que se creó, ¿verdad? A scholar, an investigator, a connector of our communities, and who were his mentors, right? Are you on mute? I think you're on mute. We're not hearing you. You're on mute. No se oye. ¿Tú me oyes a mí? No te oímos. So to keep it rolling, Kevin.
Ok, ¿me oye ahora?
Sí, ahora. Okay.
Ahora me oye.
Ajá.
Lo que pasa es que cuando paso de una pantalla a la otra, lo que sea, me lo pone mute y casi no se ve el signo acá de mute.
Okay.
All right.
So
You want me this in English or Spanish? because
The
I got
way
my
you
notes
feel-
in
The
English.
way you feel comfortable.
Okay, I feel comfortable both, but I did my I took some notes that I wanted to share with you guys. But let me present myself. I'm Dr. Luis Antonio Otero Gonzalez. I'm from the Grand Lodge of Puerto Rico, although I live in Pennsylvania, Reading, Pennsylvania. This year I turned 49 years as a Freemason. And I come from a big Masonic family, from my great-grandfather, my grandfather, my father, my uncles, everybody, and my sons are also Masons. And I served for many years as the Grand Librarian of the Grand Lodge of Puerto Rico until I moved here to the States again. I looked at how do I got involved with this Arturo Alfonso Schomburg. This is interesting because the culprit for this was Ebenezer, because he saw something that I did and he invited me to talk about this. And since that, he's been getting into this, activities where he gets me involved real quick, and I don't mind it. I enjoy them a lot. But let's see what I got here. The question is, everybody asks, why Arturo Alfonso Schomburg joined a lodge? And I started to look, and I couldn't find that he said anything about it. I joined Masonry because I come from a Masonic family like myself, or from some other influence. So I found that the answer is that he got Freemasonry. He left the island, and this is my perception. He left the island with an idea already cooked in his head. He had an idea that he was going to do something, and it comes from my own. I had the same experience when Schomburg was told that Black people doesn't have any history. I basically had the same thing when I went to high school in Puerto Rico in 1968. Oh Lord, I've trained a lot. And I remember that a teacher gave me a project. It was my first year in high school, 10th grade. He told me, I want you to tell me about the Egyptians, where the Egyptians come from, who are they? The Greeks. Where they taught me the Greeks. So I went into the class and I said, well, the Greeks had this influence from Africa, from Egypt. And I started, and the teacher, boy, she was ballistic with me. She insulted me. She told me that's not true. You did a lousy job. And she had a problem. My mom was working in the Department of Education, and I told her what happened, and she was furious. She went to talk to her. And contrary to Arturo Alfonso Schomburg, I had an apology later. But I think that's about the same experience that I had. I had the same experience that he had, and thinking, wow, there's some parallels here. And but why he joined? I joined because I have family that was Mason. But what pushed him? Well, I found something. Freemasonry, especially Prince Hall, was the hub for Black intellectual life in New York. So Schomburg was deeply involved in Black scholarly, literary, and political circles in New York. So this area functioned for him as an intellectual network. It worked for him as a space of historical preservation and a meeting ground for activists, educators, and writers. It fits perfectly with what Schomburg was thinking. Hey, I have to get into the African American elite and work with them, help them. And I think that was, and he found the place. What was that? Prince Hall Masonry. I found that he found that Schomburg believed that African descended people needed to reclaim their story, their history, okay? To combat racism, education, combat bad things, all right? So he emphasized 4 things: moral, development, education, discipline, and collective advancement. I want people to move, to learn, to get better. So he had this idea very clearly that Black people must know their past to shape their future. If we're going to go that way of progress, then we have to be educated. We have to learn. Okay? So the lodge will offer him a place where he can connect with people. Also, he will learn how to exercise his leadership, and he was a strategist. Among, I say, on top of that, he was the strategist, and he wanted to build influence that it's been denied elsewhere. So he was doing his work. So he found that since Masonry was very respected, right? This reinforced respectability, open doors, and Black people will have a place with the educational system, how they improve their education to have better chances in life. Okay, the bottom line is that I don't think that Schomburg joined Freemasonry for mystic ideas. I just want to see what's happening out there in the old world. No. That's not it. He joined for three things: intellectual goals, his commitment to racial uplift, and his need for community structures and influence. Okay? So that's what I think about Arturo Alfonso Schomburg.
Thank you, Luis.
Right.
And let's move to Kevin. Is Kevin in? Kevin Parker?
I'm here.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well.
Talked. Thank you for being part of the panel. Kevin, you're in public life, right? As well as in traditional structures and fraternal structures that support us as a people historically. And what is your read in terms of being a Mason and what it means in terms of who you are and in terms of how you perceive Arturo Alfonso Schomburg influenced you?
Yeah, no, thank you. So first of all, thank you for bringing us together. Similar to Sandino, I've known Dr. Vega for a very, very long time, going back when she was doing her PhD at Temple and in African American Studies. And we've developed a very long and close both friendship, but also professional partnership. And so once again, I find myself grateful to you for your vision, your leadership in this area, and particularly hosting this. And I'm really just humbled to be part of this conversation as I look at the luminaries and accomplished members of this panel. Again, I'm State Senator Kevin Parker. I represent the 21st District in Brooklyn, New York. I'm the chairman of the Energy and Telecommunications Committee, as well as the senior assistant majority leader in the New York State Senate. But I'm also a proud Prince Hall Mason. I am a past master of Sons of Kings Lodge number 123. I'm also a 33rd degree Mason, currently the potentate of Abu Bakr Temple number 91, and a member of the Brooklyn, Long Island chapter of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. And so having all of those connections, I think similar to Arturo Schomburg, I think has meant a lot to me. I actually discovered, so the other thing that I do, I'm also an Africana Studies professor and been teaching Africana Studies off and on at places like Brooklyn College, University of Albany, Westbury, going on over 30 years, right? And so I at one time was a researcher, this is going back to 1995, for a encyclopedia that was being done by Columbia University. And I literally spent, I think, a whole summer in the Schomburg Library, going through the archives, working on these various entries that were put into this encyclopedia. And to be honest, I had started teaching at that point, but wasn't really, I was familiar with with the name, but didn't know who he was. And after spending a whole summer, I did some deep dive on who this man was who had started this collection and what made him decide. And I think that Dr. Arturo is hitting the right points as it relates to Schomburg. But I also think that it's the right points for even Prince Hall, right? Like, a lot of us, think about, the esoteric knowledge that Masonry is supposed to give you. But the reality is that Masonry, and even Prince Hall Masonry really was more of a mutual aid society than anything else. And particularly we go back to the, late 1800s. On the side, me, Sandino, and Jamal are arguing about when we think that he received his degrees in Masonry, right? But we agree that it's towards the 1800s, not early 1900s. And we think about organizations that African Americans could belong to at that time. There weren't really there was no NAACP at that time, no Urban League. Alpha Phi Alpha doesn't get created to 1906, right? Kappa Alpha Psi and Omega Psi Phi both get created in 1911, right? And so, there's really not a lot of places to go. And being somebody who's like self-identifying as a person of African descent, finding himself in a new country, connecting with this community, Prince Hall Masonry really was an obvious choice for him to go to, exactly for the points that Dr. Luis just mentioned. And so let me just say that I think even now, as we talk about being kind of 100 years down the road, that we look and we see that these organizations like Prince Hall Masonry and Kappa Alpha Psi, what they provided for Arturo Schomburg, they continue to provide in our community. First of all, a place to find brotherhood and connection, right? Really, really important. Second, to find a place to have an outlet of collective uplift, right? Like, I think that one of the things that Arturo Schomburg really brings to us is a real sharp sense that the fight for liberation for African people is a collective activity. That is not something that you do by yourself. And so, in some cases, you see in our history of people creating organizations, he came and joined organizations that existed and already was doing that work, and he helped uplift those organizations with his leadership, right? And he did that both with Prince Hall Masonry, but also with Kappa Alpha Psi joining the Omicron chapter at Columbia University in 1928, which is, again, it's a single letter chapter. So it was like in the first 15, 20 chapters that were ever created, of Kappa Alpha Psi. This is, we're now talking about 15 years into the creation of the organization. And so I think he found brotherhood there. I think he found a collective struggle, right? The Meta Kappa always, about achievement and trying to advance things. But the other thing that I think that he found that I think is also really important is this ability to have an organization that connected with the community. Prince Hall Masons and Kappa Alpha Psi have always been organizations that were on the ground providing help in communities, right? Kappa League, which is literally the first mentoring program that you see in the United States, is created out of this sense of, we have to help the less fortunate in our communities. And I think that's a shared value that you find both in Kappa and in Prince Hall Masonry, that mission of reaching back and lifting as you climb is an important value that you find in all these organizations. And he also, so within the context of his intellectual pursuits, I think he's also engaged in some real life self-help and community help that he sees that is necessary. So it's not just like you're not contemplating his navel. He's saying, yeah, we have to understand our history, but this history has to inform us as we build our community and we help one another.
I think one of the significant aspects of Arturo Schomburg is how he connected people in different, not only across organizations, but across countries. And one of the greatest influences in my developing the kinds of organizations was the letter that Schomburg wrote to Nicolás Guillén, the poet laureate Afro of Cuba, about Langston Hughes, the poet of Harlem, right? And he tells Nicolás Guillén when Langston Hughes is going to Cuba, in his letter he says, make sure that Langston Hughes sees the Black communities in Cuba, right? So that his linking of people becomes very important in that building, right, of brotherhood, sisterhood, that is so important. And Pedro was mentioning, as Sandino was mentioning, the people that are involved in Freemasonry that we don't even know and have influenced public policy. So who are those people at different points in our history that is so important to have framed opportunities, not only for Schomburg, for us all, right? In opening avenues. Sandino, you spoke about the role of the Freemasons in the civil rights movement. Pedro, you spoke about the importance of policymakers, right? That were Freemasons in the development of what became, Puerto Rico's relationship to the United States. And I don't think that most of us know that Freemasons are sort of a global organization, a fraternity, and are everywhere influencing our lives. So I would like, the question I would like to ask at this point is, who are those that also work to change our lives with Arturo Alfonso Schomburg, right? During the periods that he was developing. Someone mentioned Betances.
Let me, I have to, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Let me, before they answer that question, there's something that have to be clarified that have not been said. And it's, what is a principal Freemasonry? Because they talk about this lodge, the other one, but what's a principal? Because I come from the Grand Lodge of Puerto Rico. I'm working here in Pennsylvania, but what's the principal? And as it's I have to say that it's a regular lodge. It's not something different from other lodges that are not regular, meaning recognized or that come from the United Grand Lodge of England that was started Freemasonry in 1717. So what happened is that Arturo Alfonso, Prince Hall arrived in, he was member, I have the dates here, 1884, Prince Hall was another African Americans or African descent. They were initiated legally in a military, in an English military lodge. That's how Freemasonry spread around the world, basically.
Let me correct that date. It's 1774.
1774.
1770, the year before.
Yeah, 1770. Yeah. Okay. Well, what I'm saying is, Prince Hall just arrived, and what happened is they got a charter from the United Grand Lodge of England because they were made Masons in a United Grand Lodge of England, but racism took another way. And why was they started? This is not, the separation was not because of ritual. The separation was not because Prince Hall was doing something different. Nothing of that. It was the same. You look at the rituals here and the rituals on the other Grand Lodges, basically the same. Okay. What happened is the racial context. These people are black. We don't want them black here. And it took so many years just to basically to fix that. Now they are recognized. Now I have to remember, there's a Grand Lodge and there's a Grand Orient. Okay. The Grand Lodge is what we have. We have the 3 degrees. But the Grand Orient is different, and that's come from France, and those are not recognized by the United Grand Lodge of England, making them irregular. That's why we don't, our lodges don't recognize those Grand Orients.
Martha?
Sí,
Okay.
Pedro.
So,
Yes. In my first intervention, I failed to mention that I was a past deputy Grand Master 4 times, a past Grand Master 3 times, and in my last term as Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Puerto Rico, I became aware of the existence of Arturo Alfonso Schomburg. As soon as I became aware of all his great deeds, I decided to sign a decree, which is the 2013-2014 number 7, recognizing the awards and the deeds of Arturo Alfonso Schomburg and declaring that he was a member, predilect son of the Grand Lodge of Puerto Rico. Since then, every year on the dot, on his anniversary, we celebrate the Arturo Alfonso Schomburg Day. As a matter of fact, tomorrow we will have another of those interventions as the Grand Lodge had a meeting on the 24th of January, which prevented us from using the facility of the Grand Lodge. But in the decree that I signed, and which I will leave copy to you for future references, we recognize the deeds of Arturo Alfonso Schomburg and why we are committed to this great activity year after year. Now, regarding what Luis mentioned to us, remember that the Grand Lodge at those times was segregated. So a black person cannot join the Grand Lodge of any jurisdiction in which the black were forbidden to enter. So that Prince Hall was a prior slave, and he decided to create a Grand Lodge, a jurisdiction of Masonic, with the benediction of the Grand Lodge of England. And since then, we have been using that. Now, in the past 10 or 15 years, we have been integrating black and white all together within one shelter of Masonry, which helped to produce better human, better Masons. So we are doing that in Puerto Rico and elsewhere.
Ali, did you want to elaborate on Prince Hall in terms of your presence in Prince Hall and also your investigations?
I want to say something. Hello.
Hello. Ajá. Ebenezer, sí.
Sí, gracias. Sí, habló ahora mi querido hermano, el gran maestro, sobre la función de conexión que ejerce la masonería, ¿verdad?, sobre los hombres que la practican. Y me parece que eso fue o es un elemento bien importante en la vida de Arturo Alfonso Schomburg. La masonería le permitió cruzar los límites que se le ponen a la gente que llega de otro lado, de extranjero, a convertirse en una parte integral de un movimiento bien importante en los Estados Unidos, especialmente en ese momento de fines del siglo XIX y principios del siglo XX. Así que en ese sentido Schomburg utilizó esa oportunidad que se da para conectar, y conectó mediante escritos. Él escribió incansablemente. Yo creo que hasta el último día que tuvo de vida, él estuvo escribiendo y colocando de manera permanente sus pensamientos y sus preocupaciones. También publicaciones en diferentes medios que en ese momento estaban disponibles, incluso creando medios para llevar su mensaje y para hacer que perdurara lo que se estaba planteando. Imagino que también Schomburg, como un gran conector, tuvo que ser un gran organizador, porque cuando usted se integra a una organización con pasión, porque entiende que eso es parte esencial de su vida, y va subiendo de niveles según usted va creciendo y según va asimilando los principios y la forma de funcionar de su organización, ciertamente usted se convierte en un organizador porque replica ese esquema y ayuda a que otros también puedan hacerlo, no solamente entrando a su logia, imagino yo que organizando nuevas logias, y eso es lo que yo obviamente desconozco. De hecho, yo me excuso, yo creía que Prince Hall había cerrado, así que en uno de los próximos viajes que tenga voy a ver si puedo conocer personalmente esta logia. Lo otro también que quiero señalar es que Schomburg era prácticamente desconocido en Puerto Rico. En 1982 yo preparé un documental que se llama El legado de Arturo Alfonso Schomburg, para lo cual fui primero a la colección Schomburg, traje materiales, y luego otros grandes artistas hicieron el trabajo de preparar el guión y eventualmente de hacer la afirmación. Y ese documental le ha dado mucha promoción a la figura de Schomburg. Y yo creo que hay que hacer nuevos trabajos sobre eso, porque tenemos que seguir conectándonos. Y la manera de conectarnos hace 40 años no es necesariamente la manera de hacerlo ahora. Quiero también señalar otra dimensión, que Schomburg también es apreciado por los Odd Fellows. Yo presido la logia Odd de Carolina. Y hace prácticamente 30 años comenzamos a hacer actividades en honor de ese conocimiento a Arturo Alfonso Schomburg, que el compañero Luis Otero estuvo participando de eso. Luego en el 2007, un compañero, que en ese momento yo no era masón, Roberto García, que era gran vigilante de la logia Caballeros de la Verdad, me invitó a dar una conferencia sobre Schomburg en el Gran Templo, eso en el 2007, y hasta donde sé fue la primera vez que se habló de Schomburg en un templo masónico en Puerto Rico. Pero primero fue en la cuestión esférica. ¿Y por qué digo esto? Porque siempre pensamos que Schomburg estaba únicamente en las organizaciones masónicas. Schomburg era universalista. Schomburg apoyaba a otras entidades. Schomburg entendía la importancia de que los seres humanos se unieran, se encadenaran voluntariamente en organizaciones. Y yo tengo fotografías donde hay actividades hostéricas, donde está Schomburg con su collarín y su mandil como masón. Así que era un hombre que rebasaba barreras. Era un hombre que no se dejaba limitar por las apariencias o por los entendidos de entonces. Así que era un hombre verdaderamente constructor de esas conexiones. Y yo creo que todavía esto que estamos haciendo hoy es un reflejo de esa voluntad de crear conexión.
Gracias, Ebenezer. Jamal and Sandino y Pedro, who are other Masons that we don't know were Masons? I remember having a conversation recently with Sandino, and he was talking about how Masons, Freemasons, surrounded Martin Luther King, right? How Masons surrounded Arturo Alfonso Schomburg, right? Even before he initiates. So how, we don't know this, right? This is not part of general information, general history. And I know that you're an educator, Jamal. How do we get this information out that it's a broad, right, network of people?
Right. So I appreciate it. I think educator's generous, but I appreciate it. So a couple things, right? I think first, important to understand, and I know the question came up earlier with Luis, but one of the reasons he transitioned from that Puerto Rican, Cuban revolutionary mindset was because, you know, after Spain lost its hold of those territories, there was no more revolution to fight, essentially, right? So he was almost like a man without a country, so to speak, right? Remember, we're talking about a man who is by nationality Puerto Rican, right? But he is a mixed race black man, right? One with a German father, who he didn't have much of a relationship with, right? So his entire life, he has essentially been a man without a country. Um, in coming to the United States, right? And all three of his wives were all black women, right? And his children were raised by their maternal family in the Deep South. And in visiting his children in the Deep South is where he was able to experience Jim Crow, right? And you know, his experience in New York City was very different from the experience that he had in the South, with segregation, with separate water fountains, with separate accommodations, all the things that come with the Jim Crow South. And it really impacted him in a way because, again, this wasn't his experience in New York City. Um, but what he fell in love with was that African culture in that New Orleans area, right? And from there is where he found this deep rooted love for Black and African culture. Fast forward to when he joined Prince Hall Masonry, um, there was a gentleman within the lodge, then still El Sol de Cuba Lodge, named John Edward Bruce, right? John Edward Bruce, and I have his biography here. This is, well, hard to see, right? Because I have my thing on, but John Edward Bruce. John Edward Bruce was, a historian, a politician, um, historian of the Black diaspora, and he was the collector that inspired Schomburg to start collecting books, right? And remember, in New York City, let me just make sure I got my facts here straight. So the first New York Public Library is established in 1895, right? So libraries themselves weren't accessible to the public at that point. So to have a library or a collection of books was a like almost a measure of status, right? To be in amongst educated people of color who had collections of books were part of the allure of becoming a Mason, right? Especially a Prince Hall Mason, because you weren't ever really in circles where you had access to books and literature and culture, which was another one of the reasons why he became part of this circle. So now, as he started to build his collection, and this is stated in his biography, he started creating these organizations where they would share books, right? And it's funny that we talk about Langston Hughes going to Cuba, because as he grew his collection and as he started to cultivate this organization or these organizations, because there were multiple, he would enlist people like Langston Hughes to when they traveled places to help him find books, right? Remember, Arthur Schomburg wasn't traditionally educated, right? He wasn't someone who had college degrees. I don't even think he graduated high school, right? However, he had this ability to organize, right? To organize people in a way that created this true real benefit, right? And again, from this accumulation of literature, he was able to amass people like your Carter G. Woodsons and your W.E.B. Du Bois. Arthur Schomburg became the hub for them to understand history, right? So we don't learn about what were the sources of this information, right? When people went out, people like Du Bois and Carter G. Woodson and your Booker T. Washingtons, where they went out into the public and they spoke about the Black diaspora and Black history and those things, a lot of times Arturo Schomburg was the source of that information, even though some of those people were on the opposite sides of certain thought processes, right? Those were competing ideologies from a Booker T. Washington and a Du Bois, right? But again, they came to Schomburg as an intermediary to get this information, right? So when we talk about Black history and the people around them, and all those people were Masons too, right? Just for clarity, all those people were Prince Hall Masons as well. Even though a lot of times, they were the Malcolm and Martin of their times with different ideologies. And in terms of, I just wanted to answer a question I saw that Ruth had in the chat. What role did Prince Hall Masons or Freemasons play in Schomburg building his collection? Very important role, right? Because again, Schomburg was a man of very modest means, right? So when he became the Grand Secretary, he traveled with the Grand Master to different jurisdictions, really on the dime of the most worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of the state of New York, right? They funded that travel. And it was that travel that gave him the ability to go to these different large cities, whether it was Boston, Cincinnati, Cleveland, all over the country, essentially, and go into these bookstores, create these relationships, start these pen pals and mailing and phone calls. That's really how he built the infrastructure or the connection of his book group, right? Was traveling with the Freemasons across the country and establishing those relationships with the bookstores and the bookstore owners all across the country. They would call him and say, hey, this came in, you want to check it out, this type of thing. And they'd mail it. He'd go out and get it. He'd have people travel and bring it back to him. They'd share books, they'd trade. Like, that's how he started this network, was really in his travels as a Prince Hall Mason.
Thank you, Jamal. Since you brought up the questions, Olga just noted that other people have questions. So can we receive the questions that came from the public before we proceed to closing? Olga?
I have one thing that I have to say that I want to make real quick. It's who were some of these famous Prince Hall Masons? Well, you have the founder, Prince Hall. Then you have Booker T. Washington was a member of Prince Hall. Thurgood Marshall, the Supreme Court Justice, was somewhere. Andrew Young was a ambassador of the United States in the United Nations. Malcolm B. Tolson, he was a poet. Shaquille O'Neal, a Prince Hall Mason. One that many people maybe want to hear, but Richard Pryor was a Prince Hall Mason. Medgar Evers, Hosea Williams, so those are civil rights that work with Martin Luther King. And then here we have to go for this. These were not Masons, Prince Hall Masons. Martin Luther King Jr. was not a Prince Hall Mason, but his father was a Prince Hall Mason. Malcolm X was not a Prince Hall Mason. W.E.B. Du Bois was not a Prince Hall Mason. And Barack Obama is not a Prince Hall Mason. So they haven't, but here we go again. Some people want to include people as part of our organizations when they're not. And I hear some people say, well, because Ramon Emeterio Betances was a Mason from Grand Lodge of Puerto Rico. He was not a Mason of the Grand Lodge of Puerto Rico. He was just way before the Grand Lodge of Puerto Rico was even created. So you have some of this, and you have to be careful because you don't want to put people where they don't belong.
Well,
you're right, but it is safe to say that some of those names you mentioned were surrounded and influenced by Prince Hall Mason.
Yeah.
Also, the point that we're making.
You're right, exactly.
Martin Luther King was surrounded by Prince Hall Masons.
Like those, especially these two rights brothers. But what I'm saying is that, yeah, they're there. But if we start adding it, they're going to say, well, you're lying. No, we're not lying. We're saying exactly what it is. Yeah. For example, Grand Lodge of Puerto Rico has a problem. They keep adding this guy as a former governor of Puerto Rico, Jesus Piñero, as a Freemason. He never was a Freemason. So they keep doing those things.
Well, I think the important thing is that a lot of people don't know about the Freemasonry. And the opportunity to talk with you and share with you, right, is very important, because it brings together not only our communities, right, which was the path of Arturo Alfonso Schomburg, but it also begins to open up more information in terms of what the fraternity of the Freemason is. And I think it's very important, because I'm coming to an end with our discussion, and we will have others if you all are mean to it. But it's very important that we know this information, and also how it helps us now, right? How this continuum, this powerful continuum of people living with principles, living with ethics and values, with a commitment to community, right, is known by all of us, and respected, right, and honored for the continuum and the work that is being done and has been done.
Yeah, one thing you have to say, I'm sorry to interrupt you, that Freemasonry, it's a fraternity. Freemasonry is not a religion. We are just a fraternity. We don't have any common thing to a religion. We're not a religion. We are a fraternity. That's it. Put it like that.
Thank you. So in closing comments, I want to say gracias. Thank you. We will do this again. Sandino and I have agreed that we will continue this, because it's so very important that people get the right information, and how better to get it for people who are in the fraternity. And important, and most important, is that at this moment in time in our history, that the work that has been done and the work that's yet to be done, right, requires the kind of ethics, values, and commitment to our community that you bring. So, mil gracias.
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 A la orden. Gracias.